Good day, ladies and gentlemen. What makes a game a legend? Is it the gameplay, the graphics, the music, or some combination of all three? Or perhaps it's something more ephemeral. Perhaps it simply came out at the right time. What keeps players coming back year after year? It's fun. The end. And one such fun game is Golden Axe.
Golden Axe was developed and published by Sega and released on January 27th, 1989, making the game just a tiny bit older than yours truly. It was released to the arcades, and that is the version we are looking at right now. Later in the video, we will see the Mega Drive/Genesis version. In addition to the super popular Genesis port, it was ported to every bloody console imaginable, and you can emulate the original arcade version via MAME. And hell, you can probably emulate the emulated versions of the arcade game through other emulators. One way a game stays legendary is if you can easily get a hold to it, and you can most assuredly get a hold to Golden Axe. The best way to get legendary, as said earlier, is to be bloody fun. Golden Axe comes from the golden age of the arcade, where numerous arcade machines were released each year, and Golden Axe stomped, cause it was fun. How was it fun? Well, unlike with many a quarter muncher, you could reasonably expect to beat the game without dumping a dump truck full of quarters into the machine. That helped. I remember my old arcade gaming days. As a child, I would ask quite specifically for 4 and only 4 quarters, because that was all I was gonna get. If you ran out of those, you were out of luck. And most arcade games of the time would suck those off. Suck those out. Within 30 bloody seconds. But not Golden Axe. Golden Axe itself is a side-scrolling beat-em-up with 2-player co-op and 3 players to choose from. You got a Conan pastiche named Axe Battler, who became something of a frontman for the franchise, the dwarf Gilius Thunderhead, and, guess there have always been females in gaming, the sexy statuesque Amazon, Tiris Flare. In this game, you can pick one of these characters to do battle with the fell forces of Death Adder. You have a single attack button that allows you to beat the crap out of enemies. You got a charge attack and a button for jumping, and when you are jumping, you can do a jump attack. The game also features some magical beasts to use as vehicles, a griffin and a couple dragons that each shoot fire a little differently. My favorite is the projectile fire. Not only does it have a cool sound effect, it's also pretty hard hitting. The beasts start out under control of the enemies, but you can knock the bastards off pretty easily. However, they can knock you off just as easily, and if you get knocked off enough, the beast will just run off saying, "Screw this, chaser." This mechanic is very forgiving, and you have to get knocked off a bunch of times before those bloody beasts will pull a runner. Unlike with so many games from this era, you have 3 hit points, but you don't lose a point with each hit. You can tank a few hits per point. It's thanks to this forgiving nature that this game became a legend. Sega made a game that actual gamers and not just pros could play. There are very few places where enemies can just shank the player. The game's controls are quick and responsive, and the enemies never have a major advantage over the player, meaning you can fight them and have fun while doing so. Very seldom will you find yourself inundated with enemies that you will have no hope of countering. Another good thing is that the controls are so good that you will never find yourself just punching air. The attacks also never get boring either, as you have a decent number of attack animations. So it's not just the same sword animation over and over again. Your super move is easy to power up, as the game always gives you enough magical pots to pull it off at opportune moments. Even the boss fights are fair, and they never get cheap in the bad way, and even a middling gamer like myself can fight them without too much difficulty. This level of fairness is also seen in the Genesis port, and I came quite close to finishing the game without any real effort, a rarity for games in those days. All told, Golden Axe is a game with a very low barrier to entry. It's a game that makes sense. The controls are easy to pick up, and it does not get boring at any time. And so, unlike many a retro game, this is one an average player is likely to finish instead of just starting it up for 2 seconds and then going, "That's cool, I guess," and then going back to something good. Not all retro games have stood the test of time, but Golden Axe, due to its fair gameplay and excellent graphical aesthetic, have kept it in the popular consciousness for over 30 years. players. If you have not played it before, rope in a friend for the co-op and see why Golden Axe is still worth playing, even in our galactic space year of 2023. So how about them graphics? 1989. These things have aged almost as well as me. This was a time when stuff started to look like things, and Sega was at the top of their game, literally, as all the sprites are very well detailed, as are the backgrounds. Animations are better than games from years later, and colors practically pop from the screen. This is a very visually striking game, and does not look old. When you boot up this game, it's obvious both who and what you are, and nothing ever looks like pixelated garbage, which is quite remarkable for a game of this vintage. This certainly turned heads back in the day. The Mega Drive port was also quite impressive, as it's just a little downgraded when compared to its arcade version, and showed that the Genesis did what Nintendo didn't. Well, at least until 91. Sound is pretty good on the arcade version, the hits sound distinctive, and the enemies have death cries that are not too annoying. Music is another standout. Each game track is bloody amazing and can be listened to outside of the game, with the opening track being iconic in its own right. The story is deceptively simple. You good guy have to fight evil man who has taken over kingdom. This is an arcade game from when devs cared and gave even something like this a good bit of depth. When you first enter the game, you are told that Death Adder has taken the king and queen of the land captive, and you gotta be a bad enough barbarian, dwarf, or hottie to take him down. Backstory on the characters can be found outside the game. Gilius the dwarf had his brother killed by Death Adder, and Mistress Flair was Batmaned by Death Adder. The game takes place in the land of Uria. As mentioned, Death Adder has kidnapped the royal family, but he has also taken the magical Golden Axe and threatens to destroy both unless everyone bows before him. You fight through the land of Uria to finally face Death Adder himself. He is the final boss in the arcade, but there is a super secret final boss in the Genesis version. For me, the best ending is the arcade version, as it shows the enemies of the game escaping into the real world with our heroes close behind. I still remember seeing this over 30 years ago at the arcade, and I kind of got freaked out because I was a child at the time, and I wondered, like, could such a thing happen? Golden Axe is such a great arcade game because it brings fun and not pain, and never outstays its welcome, and gives us a bit of fun at the end. Remember when games could have jokey endings? Ugh, I hate modern gaming. Golden Axe would get a number of sequels, with my favorite being The Revenge of Death Adder. Not only was that game super fun, if a bit less approachable than this game, it was also the third review I ever did for the channel. You know what's funny? I did that back in 2009, when the retro gaming craze was just starting and everyone was talking about the low-hanging fruit like Golden Axe. I wanted to be different and talk about games that the big boys seemed to pass by. But recently, I replayed Golden Axe and was inspired to make this video to talk about why it's a good game, and it's quite easy to see why early YouTubers picked it. It looked and played good, and the then modern gamers would have a higher chance of giving this game a chance instead of others that would have been a much harder sell.
A gaming legend is not simply made, it is born. And Golden Axe will keep players coming back for 30 more years. And so, I am General Lotz, wishing you good Golden Axe, Revenge of Death Adder, and good Knights of the Round, or whatever makes you happy.
If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing, and please consider leaving a like or a comment, as the algorithm desires your soul. And I want to thank all those fans who have supported this channel, both past and present.